I am here with Mark Hickman, COO of Winmagic, and today we're going to talk about a topic that moves a lot of organizations nowadays, and it's the GDPR. Considering that GDPR is becoming, well, let's call it active.
Absolutely.
In May next year, a lot of organizations, or basically all organizations, should look into that.
Absolutely.
So, Winmagic has a data-centric approach to the GDPR. Mark, could you explain what that really means and what the advantages of that approach are?
Absolutely. So at Winmagic, we look at data security as really a living model. So this data within your organization, across all of your endpoints, servers, and even into the cloud, this data is living, right? And during this journey and during this life, you need to secure it across your entire organization. So it's really changing the premise of just securing data and ensuring that data is secured across its journey, across every aspect of your infrastructure.
That is what you call the data-centric approach?
Absolutely, that's the data-centric approach to security.
Right. So what are the advantages of this approach and what are the other approaches?
So when you look at the legislation for GDPR, what that's really doing is legislating a data design, an architecture that has to be implemented across your organization per, I think it's one of the articles. So when you look at this and you look at a data-centric approach, you really are taking an approach whereby you're securing data across the organization and meeting each points of the key legislation. If you have a breach, what you absolutely need to do is to make that public. However, if you secure this data across your infrastructure, right, then this breach will be much less punitive in terms of costs.
Since we are at the Cloud Expo here, obviously the question comes up: how safe, or let's say it the other way around, how much can corporates, enterprises, organizations rely on cloud providers if they store their data there? Because I believe that they are already, have to comply with the GDPR. Is that enough for somebody storing their data there?
Absolutely not. So your cloud service provider, be it Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, the large players in that, they are compliant. However, your contract that you sign with them really limits their liability, right? And under GDPR, it is quite clear that your data in the cloud is your responsibility. In fact, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all the major cloud providers have all come out and clearly stated that it is your responsibility. It is a joint responsibility to meet compliance and to secure data in the cloud. So it is not just the responsibility of the CSP, it's always your responsibility as well.
Right, so how can Winmagic support organizations here when they store the data in the cloud?
So we have a solution that addresses that, called our Cloud VM, which can actually secure your private cloud, your infrastructure that runs in your data center, and then seamlessly and persistently secure that data as it moves into the cloud and back. Right? It's also cloud agnostic, which allows you to choose which cloud provider you use. Right? The key tenet here, though, and I must stress this, is we've seen numerous breaches at the large cloud providers. Right? And this is because when you secure the cloud using their technology, their encryption, your keys are stored in the cloud. We strongly recommend that everybody secures their own keys on their own premises to manage their cloud infrastructure. So don't secure the keys next to the data in the cloud, secure the keys in your environment and then access the cloud as needed.
So, Mark, does that mean that the cloud provider would not even have the key and doesn't have any access to the data an organization stores in the cloud?
This is correct.
Right, so that increases the level of security, plus this fulfills the rules and regulations of the GDPR in a cloud.
Absolutely. Right. Make sure that you're responsible, you have the security. I always use the example of your front door key. Like, you don't leave your front door key with a doorman. Right? You carry your own front door key, right? Because then you can't trust that he's not going to make a copy and give it to somebody else, right? So if you're willing to give the security of your data to a local admin at one of the cloud providers, right, this is the risk you're running.
Right. So, obviously you provide encryption for data, so is using encryption enough to fulfill the GDPR?
No, absolutely not. Right, so to fill GDPR, what you also need to enact is policies, right? Policies around geofencing data, ensuring that data isn't leaving certain geographies, as well as securing that only certain people have access to certain information, right? It's very important to classify your information so that you understand what's sensitive and what's not sensitive, and then secure it in a way that gives access to the people that need it, but not to others. So for instance, it's very important to make sure that if you had certain sensitive files running on VMs within your data center, that it's not copied over to another area where it's not going to be secured. So these are the kind of policies that you need to run with this as well.
That all sounds very complex. So how do organizations know what they have to fulfill? Is there any checklist you provide, for example, to help organizations to get through this jungle?
Yeah, we have a blueprint that we can enable customers with, especially around the data-centric approach. One of the most important things that I would recommend to all organizations is the single pane of glass approach, right? So having one place where you can look at all your data encryption, all your policies, right, and then report on that to prove that your data is secure across your enterprise.
So about 4 months ago, Winmagic did a survey or a study looking into how organizations, I believe it was across Europe, are actually prepared for GDPR, and the numbers of those who went were absolutely astounding, and I believe it was in the range of something like 80% who were not really ready to fulfill all the regulations. So do you see, or do you have any numbers yet to show what the trend is and where this is going and how quickly?
Yeah, well, that first study was enacted a few months ago. We will be running another study closer to the launch of the legislation in May that will give us that second set of numbers. So I think some organizations, as usual, are running a little behind on this, but I think there'll still be a significant number that haven't enacted everything they need, even right up to the date of May, right? Which is really leaving themselves at risk for some pretty strong fines and legislations that will cause their companies pain.
I was just talking to somebody else briefly before, and it was mentioned that a private individual can actually demand to have their data completely erased and even ask for proof. So that sounds incredibly complicated. Is it really realistic that organizations, and this is just one of those demands or regular rules within the GDPR, is it realistic that organizations can actually get there until May next year?
That particular area is very complex and very difficult. If you can imagine a file that has my name and credit card information at a certain company, how they could use that across their entire enterprise, and how many people would have a copy on their laptop, how many servers that would be on. But this is why the first thing you have to do prior to May is do a full audit across your entire organization, right? So that you know where all data sits. And then when you enact the policies to ensure that that data is not sprawling everywhere. So the days of just sending around a list of customer information out to 25 people via email, is officially over, right? You need to be able to control your data and know where it goes and set policies accordingly.
Right. So the basic message is, if you as an organization haven't started yet, start now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mark. Very interesting talk.
Thank you.